Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us here today. My name is Amr Barghouth. I'm a senior energy finance specialist at RTI International. Please bear with me for the next few minutes as I introduce RTI International and our panelists. RTI is an independent nonprofit research institute dedicated to improving the human condition. Clients rely on us to develop solutions that demand an objective and multidisciplinary approach, one that integrates expertise across the social and laboratory sciences, engineering, and international development. We believe in the promise of science, and we are inspired every day to deliver on that promise for the good of people, communities, and businesses around the world. RTI offers expertise in the strategic, technical, and policy aspects of sustainable energy development. We advise governments on innovative approaches to increase energy access and improve the security and reliability of energy services in countries around the world. Through our Energy Secure Philippines project, we're helping the national utility prevent outages through better performance monitoring and cybersecurity measures. We catalyze energy sector reform through legal, regulatory, and market restructuring efforts that give investors confidence and enable increased private sector participation investments in developing countries. On our Philippines Building Low Emissions Alternatives to Develop Economic Resilience and Sustainability, or Be Leaders program, we added 242 megawatts of clean energy capacity to the grid through the implementation of a coaching and mentorship program for new business entrants to the energy sector. We were also able to leverage 579 million in clean energy investments. We equip organizations across the energy value chain, from national utilities to small energy service companies, with the knowledge and skills to effectively run their agencies and companies. Through the East Africa Energy Program, we continue to support the national utilities of Kenya and Ethiopia in reducing their technical and commercial losses, increasing their cost recovery, and improving their operations, leading to 4% reduction in losses in Kenya in the year 2020, and 37% increase in revenues in Ethiopia in the same year. Lastly, we develop innovative tools and processes to increase the professional participation and leadership of women in the power sector. Our East Africa Energy Program is working with the Rwandan government and private sector actors to bring over 1,400 women into Rwanda's fast-growing energy sector. We're excited by the work we do every day with host governments to remove barriers and catalyze opportunities to accelerate the adoption of cost-effective, clean energy solutions. Next slide, please. Today we have assembled a great panel for you to discuss Tunisia's situation. We have Mr. Ron Chebra. Mr. Chebra is Vice President of Grid Modernization for EnerNex, a Chase company, and a leader in providing engineering, consulting, and research services to the electric power industry worldwide. He is a recognized expert in utility modernization with a deep operating knowledge of technology solutions in areas such as microgrids, battery energy storage, renewable energy integration, smart grid, distribution automation, advanced metering infrastructure, demand response, and behind-the-meter technologies. He provides strategic consulting services to leading energy organizations and industry suppliers of products and services. Mr. Chebra has over 35 years of experience in the field, is a frequent contributor to industry journals, and has previously been the chairman of the Smart Cities Internet of Things track of Distributech. Welcome, Mr. Chebra.
Thank you.
Our other next panelist is Mr. Mahdi bin Abdullah, is the board chair of Expectation State Tunisia, an organization that specializes in facilitating private sector investment in emerging states to catalyze growth, strengthen the economy, and benefit society as a whole. Mahdi is also the founder and managing partner of Excalibur International Advisory, an independent firm focused on supporting businesses and governments in investment and trade. He previously served as the general manager with Shell and vice president with VG Group in Tunisia, where he was entrusted to lead several $100 million complex government and commercial negotiations with high value impact. He's currently a senior advisor for several energy companies, both in oil and gas and renewables. He's also a founding member and the former president of the Tunisian Council for Bilateral Chambers, and the former executive director in charge of international relations at Utica, the leading confederation of Tunisian businesses, where he helped to reposition the Tunisian private sector internationally and support negotiations of several bilateral and multilateral investment and trade agreements. Welcome, Mr. Abdallah. And lastly, we have Mrs. Reem Bouchina, is the head of Sustainable Energy Policies and Member State Support Unit for the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, where she leads national and regional projects related to renewable energy and energy efficiency deployment in the Arab region. She spearheads the development and implementation of renewable energy and energy efficiency policies and action plans, the management of sustainable energy projects, and the planning and implementation of capacity development activities for sustainable energy and climate change. She has more than 22 years of experience planning and developing RE and EE projects and has been deeply involved in Euro-Mediterranean projects and studies in sustainable energy field, working with organizations such as the European Union and World Bank. Mrs. Bouchina started her career as an energy planner, now in the Tunisian Utility of Electricity and Gas, STEG. Welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you for finding the time to join us today. If you allow me, I'll just take a couple of minutes to kind of set the framework for the discussion with an overview of the government of Tunisia's plan. The government of Tunisia sets the stage for our conversation today. Next slide, please. In 2018, the government of Tunisia released their action plan for the acceleration of renewable energy projects in Tunisia, an ambitious roadmap for their energy sector. This vision is based on a balance of three interrelated dimensions: energy security, energy equity and governance, and lastly, sustainable development. This strategy is underpinned by 11 different priorities, including ensuring fair sourcing to all regions, respect for the environment, public-private partnerships, and securing supply and diversifying the energy mix through the expansion of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Some illustrative goals include increasing domestic electricity production from renewable sources to 30% by 2030, reducing energy demand by 30% by 2030, and lowering the carbon intensity across all sectors by 41% by 2030. I'd like to turn to Ron from EnerNex, a Chasey company, for the next question. In your experience and based on your knowledge of the latest development in the sector, how will advances seen over the past decade across the world in clean energy and smart grid technologies enable Tunisia to achieve its vision? And can you speak to a couple of technological trends that are most exciting for the Tunisian context? And again, thank you for joining us today for this panel.
Amr, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the panel and to the listeners. You raised some very interesting thoughts and ideas, and I just want to cover a couple of aspects. I think we're all seeing a tremendous surge in what the industry is calling Internet of Things. And, for years and years and years, we've had a grid of things, but we really haven't leveraged some of the latest technologies and innovations. And as we look at things that are from a technological perspective, there's some innovations, some creative activities in that particular space, particularly as it relates to sensors. Sensors are becoming relatively prolific. There's an ability to measure and monitor many things in a grid, whether they be in the distribution or the transmission side. And the ability of these sensors now to communicate over robust communications infrastructure now brings that data and that information readily available to the back office, mid office, and eventually to the front office of the utility to provide actionable information and data that could be used to improve performance. And I kind of look at things, I myself have invested quite a bit in smart home technology. I have appliances and lights and things that are grid sensitive and grid aware and grid compliant. We know that as we look at renewable integration, there's definitely going to be a need for a lot of the renewable resources to be grid sensitive and to be able to mold and adapt and also support the grid. So I think that from a technological perspective, we're seeing a lot of things that are being used to improve the performance, deliver reliable, secure, safe, and renewable energy into the grid. So from a technological perspective, there's a lot of innovations happening and a lot of ability to now begin to take this area and leverage it for the experience and for the journey that Tunisia is headed in the energy sector, particularly as, let's take, for instance, energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, having devices that are now aware of proximity, sensor presence, occupancy, now makes energy efficiency a less than conscious action. It is something that could be done, set up in a routine or scheme that now executes based upon schedule or knowledge. So I think there's a lot of technological innovations that really support the vision for the energy sector. Along the other spectrum, which if we look at technology, people, and process, I think technology enables. And the enablement now really translates to what people can use that technology for. I think, as you mentioned in the intro, building on the human capital, the ability of individuals and people now to be able to take advantage of the information and the information that is being made available really sparks and creates an opportunity both for inclusion and innovation, and overall can improve the knowledge base and the quality of life of a lot of individuals. I think, technology is simply a tool. I think the tool enables individuals now to act with a greater awareness and greater appreciation of the information made available to them. And from a process perspective, I think that, how people use the tools is going to really increase to be able to do continuous improvement. We learn on an ongoing basis, and being able now to apply that learning knowledge, that awareness, the capability to continually focus and drive toward greater improvements, greater process, and also to increase the ability to include new processes. As we think of, for instance, smart metering. Smart metering will be able to enunciate or indicate power outage or power conditions. The process by which that information is now used and leveraged might create new opportunities for increased awareness and increased utilization of process and integration among various organizations within the energy sector. So I think if we look at the triad of tools, people, and processes, there is tremendous opportunity now to help achieve the goals that have been set forth in the energy sector, both for renewable integration, energy efficiency, demand response, and overall system performance. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Amr.
Thank you. That was a great overview of how technological advances, and you mentioned sensor technologies, automation, smart meters can enable renewable energy efficiency, and grid optimization across the energy value chain. Now, and you mentioned people and processes. For people and processes, I will turn to Reem to ask. But first, I would like to pose a question to Mehdi about how we're going to pay for these technologies, because they don't come cheap. So, in its first INDC, intentional nationally determined contribution, published in 2015, the government of Tunisia estimated that it would take $15 billion USD between 2015 and 2030 to meet its mitigation targets in the energy sector. $15 billion. $8 billion for renewable energy, $7 billion for energy efficiency. Now, without private sector participation, it's unlikely that the public sector will be able to achieve these targets. So how would you describe the current investment environment in Tunisia? And what actions are needed to increase private sector participation? And what opportunities exist for private sector participation?
Thank you, Amr, and thank you all for the invitation. And thanks for a great question and the role of the private sector for the development of the sector is fundamental. So while Tunisia has, as you said before, an ambitious plan to reach 30% of electricity production coming from renewables in 2030, there is still many efforts that have to be done to meet that target. And barriers are both financial and commercial, but also socio-political. That doesn't mean that they cannot overcome. Actually, they can be overcome, but there is no more time to waste, and we are already behind. And behind for renewables, but also when we talk about 30% of renewables in 2030, still Tunisia will have to find the 70% of gas in order to fill in the rest missing. But that is a full other strategy that needs to be put in place. So to go back to the development of the sector and renewables, I can say that the renewable sector has seen positive level of interest since 2017 from local, regional, and international investors with 3 different regimes: the concession regime, the authorization regime, and the self-consumption. Despite some delays, the concession regime is the one that is going well. Tunisia authorities have partnered with the international institutions to launch the first tender under this regime, and they really attracted large investors. I mean, the biggest IPP and the biggest IPPs in the world, and achieved an extremely competitive pricing, which is really good. And we can say that we got the lowest electricity tariff in Africa for the concession regime, which is very important. We have like 2 projects of 50 megawatt, one of 100 megawatt, and one of 200 megawatt. This shows that setting up a good and viable regulatory framework is key to unlock investments and to attract the best international firms, which is Tunisia is looking for. However, on the other hand, the 2 other regimes are facing some issues. And the most important point is the contractual framework, and I know Reem will be talking about that in more detail later. The template PPA proposed for the authorization regime is not in line, in my opinion, with the best international standards, and then is not attracting international financial institutions. You were talking before, Amr, about how to finance all of that. We need to attract the financial institutions. For the self-consumption, it's a little bit different. The secondary legislation related to the transmission tariff and the welling and metering mechanism is missing in that framework, which leaves investors sometimes unclear on how to structure their projects. Despite the steady decline in price over the 4 rounds of authorization regime, it's important to remind that despite the difficulties, the financing remain very difficult and project implementation are still low. So we are getting very good prices even in authorization regime. 4 rounds were done, and round after round we're getting better prices. However, the financing options are difficult in the market for this authorization regime, both on the local and international market. And until some existing issues are resolved and more projects can successfully come online, this is unlikely to change. Because we had many projects that were awarded, but for now, not many of them are being implemented or are operating. So this difficult financing environment ultimately leads to a higher financing cost than the one expected, due to the need for project sponsors to find innovative, costly financing solutions, including various guarantee structures, which is quite complex. The concession project, as I said before, however, should not face the same issues, as it is a different structure, but we will need to wait and see as the timeline is different. So in general, I mean, Tunisia holds a huge potential for renewables, and I was criticizing here a little bit, but it's very important and very positive. So Tunisia holds a huge potential. It can enable Tunisia to increase its energy independence, and we can talk about it later, maybe about the mix of energy between gas and renewables. It would reduce cost of power for customers. It would improve competitiveness of industries, and be an important vector of job creation, and how important a job creation for Tunisia today, and not only for Tunisia. It can also be a catalyst for new industrial activities and export revenues, especially when we see in today's world the rapid development of green hydrogen. And that's another area where we can look at development in Tunisia. However, investors and lenders need to see clear investment frameworks and their normal levels of protection through market standard contracts and obligation of the stakeholders. This will ensure that not only do investors continue to participate in the market, but projects get implemented on time. So it's not enough to just attract the investor, they need to be able to develop their project. And this takes us to another complexity, which is the importance of political stability. This is a fundamental element to ensure we have an ambitious vision with motivating policies and regulation, and of course, the strength of a strong, stable government that can implement the strategy and meet investors' expectations. This is extremely important. The chain of decisions needs to be clear from the assembly to the head of government office, to the ministry, to the director. That chain must be always working and give the right comfort to investors. So maybe I will conclude by saying, what should we do in the future to meet the target, and what should we do as private sector to push for that? We need to support increased launch of private sector renewable programs. This can be a role that could be played by IFIs or DFIs by providing advice to the Ministry of Energy on tender documentations. We should be better advocating really strongly bankability of the power purchase agreement, the PPA, with all key stakeholders. We need to remind that with the head of government, with the ministry, with the state, with the labor union, with local banks. Tunisia is complex, and we need to embark all the stakeholders for them to understand the interest of such projects. We need to promote private sector participation with focus on power. And for this, enhance policy engagement to increase private sector participation in the renewable energy sector through advisory on the investment framework. We need to improve energy efficiency and green economy solutions, including regulatory support for renewables and energy efficiencies. And this should lead to the development of a green economy strategy implemented across sectors. And finally, and I will always end by that, we should all, as private sectors from across all sectors, advocate for the importance of a more stable social political environment, an environment that allows us to invest, to project ourselves on the future and see an environment that is stable and sustainable.
This was a great overview of the investment environment and the opportunities and challenges that exist. I just wanted to take a moment here to ask our audience, welcome them again, and ask them to enter any questions that they may have in the Q&A box, so we can pose these questions as they come to our panelists. For my next question, I will turn to Reem from RCREEE. You know, both Ron and Mehdi highlighted the importance of people, you know, whether it's people, you know, consumers of energy, people driving the decisions of energy, people's capacity to implement projects, to design projects, and so on. Now, RCREEE has been working on, you know, actively supported Tunisia's power sector for over a decade now in capacity building and institutional strengthening. In your experience, what are the main knowledge gaps in the sector, and how do we go about empowering individuals and institutions to lead the energy transition in Tunisia?
Thank you, Amr, and thanks to RTI for this opportunity. Just I want to briefly introduce the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, which is an intergovernmental organization that aims to promote and increase the share of renewable energy and energy efficiency application in the Arab region. Currently, we have 17 member states, and we are working on policies, strategies, capacity development activities, technical and financial support, etc., dedicated basically to a sustainable energy field. So, referring to your question, I will build on what is already was said by Mehdi, and I want also to add, in addition to the financial and contractual aspect that was already raised during Mehdi intervention, I want also to raise some points also related to the power sector in Tunisia. Other than the lack of fossil resources that already was mentioned, main challenges are currently facing the power sector, basically linked to the inadequate existing infrastructure that could not follow up the energy transition scenario already fixed by Tunisia, and linked also to the lack of investment needed for the empowerment of the power sector. So as far as the security of supply is concerned, the high share of renewables became a real concern with the lack of an efficient regional interconnection and the absence of a national storage system. The second point was also raised by Mehdi, is the lack of diversification of energy resources, which really threatens the energy independence. So it's very important to integrate renewables into the national energy mix. And the last point is also linked to the point already also raised by Ron, the importance of energy efficiency. So even if Tunisia is considered among the leaders in the deployment of energy efficiency applications and programs, still a lot of work to enhance and improve the performance of electricity generation and to set up an efficient demand side management to overcome the high annual increase of energy demand in the country. So I think that already the topic that we are raising is very important, as addressing these challenges and modernizing the power sector system in general is fundamental to improve and move towards a sustainable and clean energy transition path. I think that main pillars already, there is the aspect related to contracting and which is, I consider, is linked to the creation of an enabling sustainable energy market and an enabling environment at the national level. This is very important, the enabling environment, the part dedicated to knowledge and management of new technologies, in addition to the empowerment of national institutions and capacity. As you said, it's very important to tackle the expertise and the knowledge and the expertise of national experts. So currently, it's very important to highlight that great efforts are already ongoing in this regard in Tunisia to set up a sustainable transition strategy and to move to a more robust power system. And recently, we, as mentioned by Mehdi, we observed that there is a lot of work that is done for the implementation of and concession renewable energy projects. However, I think that a lot of work needs to be done. Basically, the reinforcement of the current regulatory and institutional framework, to simplify administrative procedure that I think are facing and are among the main issues facing private sector investment. The acceleration of the process linked to the establishment of independent regulator, and the empowerment. It's very important to think about the empowerment of the current institution and the technical capacity, in addition to what is already raised also by Iran, the introduction of new technologies such as Power to X, smart grid, digitalization, storage technology, etc. So regarding the empowerment, I think that it was the question, the focus question that you already raised. I think that it's very important to achieve all of these. We have really to empower national expertise and reinforce knowledge management. As you know, human resources are the main driver for any positive change. So at RCREEE, we already conducted the studies, and the outcome of this study raised that capacity development has emerged as one of the most needs in the Arab regions and the fundamental element to enhance sustainable development and succeed national energy transition strategies. This is also applicable to Tunisia. In this regard, I think that the first thing to do is to well understand the real needs of the country and the training and courses required and to identify current initiative and programs to avoid any duplication and to really go towards the good and efficient path. The study that we already conducted at RCREEE raised that main challenges facing capacity development activities in the regions are basically the limitation of training funds, the absence of training norms and standards, the deficiency of dedicated institution and training provider, the lack of capacity development infrastructure, and the most important point is the absence of cooperation between institutions, basically research centers, industrials, and national authorities. So I think that is crucial to develop and set up a sustainable capacity development strategy program in accordance and complementarity with what is currently being done based on quality assurance mechanism for training activities. This should be also linked to the power sector modernization. So new topics and new trends and perspectives have also to be introduced. In addition, special attention have also to be allocated to the creation of qualified training centers and platforms. Already in Tunisia, there is a great interest to increase sustainable energy expertise and knowledge, and a lot of centers already exist. Many of them needs reinforcement, and a lot of them needs also to enhance their infrastructure. I know also that STEG has an excellent training center that could be improved and modernized. New modules and programs shall be introduced to follow up national future orientation and perspectives towards clean energy technologies. So in the same study, we also identified what are the main topics required in the regions, and it's the same requirement and needs also for Tunisia. And what is raised and is that main topic required are renewable energy and energy of efficiency forecasting, planning, system modeling, mobility, district cooling, power to X, storage technologies, hydrogen, wind offshore, smart grid, etc. And these also topics are among main needs in Tunisia. So as a conclusion, I want to emphasize the importance of knowledge and the existing of core of national expertise to promote sustainable energy deployment. And new initiative and programs also have to support Tunisia in achieving and reinforcing already its ongoing efforts, because there is already many things that are already ongoing. So it's important that these initiatives will complement these efforts in implementing a sustainable transition in the country and enriching what is already planned in Tunisia in the medium and long-term sustainable energy. So hope that this new opportunity will also tackle these challenges raised during Mahdi intervention and the challenges linked also to the power sector and will complement what is already exists and will reinforce all the existing initiatives. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you, Reem. And thank you to all three panelists for this great overview of the various facets of the development of the energy sector in Tunisia. I'm just quickly reviewing some of the questions that have been coming, and I'll post some of them to our panelists. I'll ask the question, and whichever panelist feels more comfortable answering that question, I encourage you to take on that question. I guess the first question is, Tunisia is not just Tunis, right? Tunisia is also, it has many governorates, many regions outside of Tunis. I wanted to hear your thoughts on the role of sustainable energy in local economic development in the regions outside of Tunis, as well as the role in youth empowerment, women empowerment, and creating economic opportunities. And I understand this was not one of the questions that we discussed in our prep, but if anyone would like to take on that question, please do.
Happy to maybe try to answer a few of the questions. I talked about it earlier in saying how much the development of renewable projects could create values in a different region. Because the developing solar projects, most of them, if not all of them, will be done in remote areas that are missing a lot of jobs, values, infrastructure, and so on. So Tunisia has, as I said before, an unbelievable potential for renewables, especially in solar across the maybe 2/3 of the country in the south, areas that really need investment, that really need jobs, that really need vocational training, that really need infrastructure, and this project will bring that to this region, and they will be focusing on these areas that need so much, that were missing industries these past few years, and through these projects they could be the center of attraction of investment. And of course, in developing, we talked before briefly about the dependency of Tunisia. Tunisia today is producing 97% of electricity from gas, and 50% of it is, if not more, is coming from Algeria. This is not a sustainable situation. First, on an energy dependency, but also from a cost point of view. So everything that we will do to develop either indigenous gas or develop renewable energy, free energy for Tunisia, will allow us to enhance our independency, but also reduce the bill that is very costly for the country, and use that money for other development and to help the Tunisian citizens. We don't hear you.
Thank you. Reem, you look like you wanted to jump in as well.
Yes, I think that when we talk about sustainable energy, it's a sustainable development. So it will impact the socio-economic life of person, industrial development, etc. So sustainability could not be limited to only energy. It's a global sustainability for the country. Hence the importance to introduce renewables in Tunisia. And as it was highlighted by Mahdi, the sites where the potential of renewable energy is high are in general located in a regional and not in the capital. So I think that the promotion of renewable energy will have a great socio-economic impact at the regional level. Yeah.
So when we start looking at renewables, and look at worldwide situation with renewable deployment. Certainly plant or power utility grade renewables requires a completely different set of skill sets that currently exist in the environment. So there's a lot of requirements for modeling, engineering analysis, ongoing testing, compliance. So there's an elevation of skill requirements with the introduction of renewables. And certainly I think that now promotes a higher level of skill requirements for individuals that is translatable not only within the area, but is fungible across the entire region. So I think that as we start looking at renewable implementation, the skills that will be developed and expanded upon could be leveraged throughout the world.
Ron, I'd like to stay with you and ask a somewhat different question, more related to technology. And it's, as we see e-mobility and electric vehicles, gaining traction in the region. I'm originally from Jordan, and I know electric mobility is already taking off there. I imagine Tunisia, given the energy prices, will probably be also a very attractive market for e-mobility. My question to you is, what will be the impact of these technologies related to e-mobility on the grid, stability of the grid as well as its reliability?
Well, I think that's a very topical question, not only in the area, but globally. We've become accustomed to the ability to hop into a vehicle and virtually go anywhere within a level of assurance and comfort that we will find a fueling station nearby. So range fear, I think, is one of the big factors that potentially has been impacting the further deployment of electrical vehicles. But as you can see in many countries here in North America and elsewhere, the grid is now being tailored and incentives being created to create these charging stations. And it's political, it's technical, it's economic. If we can consider an electric vehicle the equivalent to a central air conditioner on wheels, that is an analogy that we need to understand the impact and also the customer expectation. You go to a fueling station and you could refuel your car in a matter of minutes, as opposed to having to wait hours for a full charge replenishment. I think that the impact of electric vehicles on the grid, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of anticipation of grid to vehicle, vehicle to grid. But I think the fundamental challenge that we still need to overcome is grid to vehicle. And that's accessibility, availability, and comparable customer experience to meet the fear of having range anxiety or uncertainty with regard to the ability to transport your family and goods from point A to point B. We will overcome these issues. Battery technology is improving. Efficiency of vehicles are certainly on the forefront, as you see a lot of the vehicle manufacturers making commitments to the fleet percentage that will be electrified by a certain period of time. And I think the responsiveness of the grid operator to provide these facilities to enable that type of mobility that we ultimately will get to.
What mistake from other more advanced countries should Tunisia avoid when smartening the grid?
Excellent question. I think, and I was thinking a lot about the situation. I would say, and I'll try and sum it up into a phrase that probably highlights, work on the achievable versus the aspirational. And I think many utilities have set high expectations, high goals in terms of being able to provide certain capability. I would say that one of the things that is very important is to build on minor wins, build on small wins. Don't go for the enormous hurdle or challenge, but begin with a strategy that you will build upon it's a journey as opposed to a destination. And every journey has opportunities as well as pitfalls. So I think the key lesson that I would suggest in terms of lessons learned is learn from others. I think one of the things that, from a stepping stone perspective, we've seen smart metering become a key enabler for a lot of these future capabilities and competencies. Smart metering is the meter itself is not just a consumption cash register. It is an intelligent sensor that provides valued information both to the utility, but also to the consumer. So I think building on a foundational platform, a foundational environment that deploys the technology that unlocks the capability of information, knowledge, and control in front of as well as behind the meter is a fundamental thing that is really root for future growth and opportunity expansion. So I would say, to coin a phrase that the DOE has used, it's a walk, jog, run environment. Let's not start the race off at a high pace. Let's figure out how to achieve the objectives in a very tempered but also focused environment. So walk, jog, run is what I would suggest is the best way to approach this.
Thank you. All right, so I have a question, and I'll open it to the panelists, and I think this will be our last question before we start wrapping up. And the question is, again, another topical question, but COVID-19, it's since it hit, it changed the world, and we're recalibrating our models and recalibrating our plans. What impact will COVID-19, if any, have on Tunisia's ability to achieve its targets and modernize its energy sector?
May I jump maybe to respond on different angle? I think the COVID-19 situation and this past year has showed us how important it is to focus on renewables. Also, because we've seen let's say the fragility of oil and gas when people cannot travel, when you cannot bring technicians, when you cannot bring drillers, when you cannot be operation people. So the impact of travel ban on our energy efficiency, and not energy efficiency, energy security from oil and gas was hurt during this year, and that has impacted Tunisia. However, if we had before that, if we had more solar panels, if we had many projects developing electricity from the sun, our independency, not only a dependency from other countries, but our independency in human being coming to fix things on the ground would have been way less.
Amr, I think there's a couple things that we're all learning from the COVID-19 environment. Number one is the adaptability of the human nature. We've all been forced into a situation that is uncomfortable. It has uncertainty, has fear, it has a number of aspects, but yet we are surviving, we are thriving as individuals because we're adapting to the situation. We're not letting the environment control us. We're doing our best to control the environment. Number two, I would say we've become more aware of our dependence on reliance on energy and communications. I can't imagine being in an environment where I do not have power and I do not have connectivity to interact with individuals. So I think as we look at the interdependence of energy, communications, and all the aspects that we've come to know and realize in our course of human life, that there is a tremendous ecosystem, much of which is really dependent upon sustainable, reliable, available energy. I also think that we've come to respect and understand others. I think we've become more communal aware, even though we're communal deprived. I think that we've looked at the situation among everyone and recognized that we're all in the same situation, and that we have a greater appreciation and respect and doing our very best to ensure that our children are educated, our elder are taken care of, the health environment is made available. I think we've grown in greater respect for the individual, and I hope that this is a turning point as opposed to an inflection point in terms of how we deal with humanity and the expectations of our fellow citizens. So I think COVID has been as much of a pain and as much as a fear and a threat. It is an awakening of a new situation that will drive greater interdependence.
Thank you. And this is the great interventions, and Mehdi's earlier point about the renewable energy security within the COVID context reminded me also of the topic or the theme of local manufacturing of renewable energy and energy efficiency, and the importance of that. If travel bans exist on people coming in to drill or to install systems, it becomes more important to have local manufacturing. And I've been following with great interest the launch of Challenge 1 and manufactured, designed in Tunisia and launched into space. So if Tunisia is capable of doing that, of locally manufacturing a satellite, I think Tunisia, with the right level of support from the international community, from the United States, where RTI is based, will help facilitate and accelerate the transition to energy. The ingredients in there is there. It's the support that's needed. All right, so I'm being told this is time to wrap up. I have many more questions for our panelists, but I guess the one important question to leave everyone with is, what are your parting recommendations, words of wisdom, as our stakeholders, our audience participants are thinking about Tunisia, advancing Tunisia. What words would you like to share with them? And I'll start with Reem.
So I think that we have great challenges and great opportunities in Tunisia, and future is for nano and clean technologies. So we have to be prepared and ready for that, basically by having the required enabling framework and knowledge, expertise, and the adequate regulatory framework to really move forwards and promote sustainable energy deployment. And I think crises such as COVID-19 and etc. are a driver to really promote and adopt a new energy system strategy and concepts. It's not basically now there is some program that already slowed down by these crises, but I think that it will impact positively the future through the adoption of sustainable energy strategies and the implementations of a high share of renewables and energy efficiency applications.
We don't hear you.
Mehdi, please.
Quickly, I would just maybe send a message to the investors and just tell them that the potential of renewables in Tunisia has really no limits. And there's a lot to do. Despite the difficulties, everything can be done and has to be done in Tunisia, in renewables, in solar, in wind energy. So Tunisia can really be their long-term partner of choice. And I put this picture here behind me, so there's a good business, but there is also a beautiful country where they can also enjoy a beautiful landscape.
Thank you for the invitation. We may take you up on it.
So my parting thoughts, and we've talked a lot about economics, financing, human power, and technological capability. I would say my recommendation, my closing thoughts are work with those that you trust who will empower you to achieve your goals. And that, I think, is the most important message that I could leave, that this is a very significant, very important initiative. Work with those that you feel confident can help you.
Thank you, Ron. I think we're coming up on the hour. Just wanted to say well, first of all, thank our panelists and thank our audience members for participating. I also wanted to mention that RTI International, EnerNex, a Chasey company, Expectation State Tunisia, and the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, we're all invested in Tunisia's energy transition. We're all trying to help in various ways, and we will continue to do that. So to our audience members, please feel free to reach out if you if you have any questions, or if you would like to collaborate with us, with any of the organizations. We're big on collaboration. We're big on learning from each other and working together. Thanks again for our panelists. This has been a great conversation, and have a great one, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.